I'm Douglas Phillips from Newburyport, Massachusetts. From the discussion tonight, I can see clearly that the alkali silica reaction is a significant issue for the NRC. And as I understand it, there was recognition that there was a 22% degradation in the concrete that was identified as far back as May of 2010. And while the result of your study thus far is very encouraging tonight, that result has not come out until December of 2012, or 2.5 years later. Now, I want you to know that in the course of tonight's meeting, a colleague of mine went out into the parking lot and he inspected the brakes on the car of each member of the NRC. And he notified me that each of you has a 22% chance that your brakes will fail on the way home tonight. Now, I would like to think if I gave you that information legitimately, rather than getting in your car and driving home as you normally would, I would like to think you would call a tow truck and not use your car until you had your brakes inspected and fixed. The issue to me is that as a resident who lives within the 10-mile radius, when a significant issue is identified, why doesn't the NRC suspend operations until there can be a clear determination of whether it is safe to proceed or not? That's my first question. I have 3 minutes. I'm going to ask 2 more and then I will let you respond. My second question is this. When any asset ages, more can go wrong with the asset. My understanding is that when licenses are issued for nuclear power plants, they are granted for a period of 20 years. Could you tell me, when granting a license for older power plants, why are they relicensed for 20 years? Couldn't they be relicensed for a much lesser period, like 5 years, that would allow for more stringent, more detailed inspections to take place? I understand that the recognition of the ASR issue occurred as a result of a licensing inspection. My third question is, could you, this goes a little off the ASR issue and more into the issue of licensing in general. Could you tell me what criteria apply to the strength and the security that's required for the fuel storage building that houses the spent fuel? Because it's common knowledge that in today's world, terrorists are most interested in spent fuel because they can use that to make dirty bombs. And where we are concerned with the issues of rising tides, or we are concerned with the issue of raising sea level, and all of the issues that surround Seabrook, I'd like to know, when you complete the licensing process, what criteria apply to that fuel storage building?
I don't know how much detail you want to get into the security requirements of the fuel storage building, but go for it.
Yeah, let me take your first question first. Your second question I'm going to give to Mr. Mike Marshall on your relicensing. Why is it 20 years vice 5 years? He has probably the best handle. He works in our division of license renewal. But first, and then your third question, yeah, as far as we do have strict security requirements for surrounding the spent fuel, both the fuel that's in the pool and also that's stored external on the pads. But as far as what those requirements are, that would be a more detailed discussion, and some of that I wouldn't be able to share with you. So let's cover your first question on operability. Mr. Cook alluded to it earlier about the 22%. 22% was 22% of a compression test, so that's one part of the concrete, and it was one sample, and there's many other samples, and so we later found that probably wasn't a representative sample. So it's not quite, your analogy wasn't quite apples to apples there. The information on that, there's a lot of more testing, a lot of more information to tell us what is the strength of the concrete, both in tensile, both in compression, how it can flex. There's a lot of different numbers. So to wrap your hands around one test, And when you say 22%, was it 22% from design, or was it 22% from as-built? And I believe that was from an as-built number. And
From as-built.
and so it still had significant more strength than it was designed to, than it was required to have. It was just what was thought to be a 22% degradation in that one factor, just compression. So in order to determine operability, and I got to be short because we only got to go with what. But operability, they have to, the licensee will find a degraded component, structure, system, and they are required to determine whether or not it can still perform its function. If they or the NRC in their review find that it can't perform its function, then they have to take the action required by that system that's not able to perform its function. It may be that they have to shut it down. That's called limiting condition for operation, and there's requirements that say you have to shut down. So in that case, it would be shut down. In this case, they found that the system could perform its function. It was operable. We reviewed those operability determinations and found that they were valid. And let me get your next question with Mike Marshall.
Please.
I have a third question. He's going to ask. Okay.
Hello, my name is Michael Marshall. I'm the chief of the Structural and Electrical Branch and License Renewal. And I'm answering the second question with regards to 20 years. First, I'd like to point out that our initial license is actually granted for 40 years. And for the renewed license, that's 20 years. As far as why, I don't have a good answer right now, but I would like to point out that we are not required to grant a renewed license all for the full 20 years. We actually could, and we haven't done so at this point, but we could grant a renewed license for less than 20 years.
When does the
Thank
current
you.
license expire?
Ed Cameron? Well, when does this current license expire? 2030?
March 15, 2030.